So as you're going through the recovery journey, as you're overcoming these bizarre, mysterious symptoms you're experiencing, whether that's palpitations, dizziness, what I struggled with digestive issues, whether it's brain fog or vertigo or whatever sensations that you're experiencing that the doctor just can't figure out and says it's just anxiety, as you're learning the mechanics of how anxiety works, and as you learn the steps and principles that we also mentioned to overcome it, you might notice that you have some unproductive habits. A lot of these habits can include Google searching your symptoms, always getting assurances, needing that safety person, constantly ruminating about your symptoms, your sensations, how you're feeling internally all the time. You might have a sense of guilt of all this time you've lost, and you might feel like you're a victim to all of this. Well, as you're going through the recovery journey, you learn that you have to let go of these habits. You have to unlearn these habits. Some of these habits have been developed as you fell into the cycle as a way for protecting yourself. At least you thought it was used to protect yourself, but it's counterproductive. But a lot of these habits you might have just developed in general. This might have just been part of your personality. It might have been something you developed when you were younger. Maybe it was something you recently developed that just doesn't serve you. And you might be wondering, okay, how do I let go of these unproductive habits? Whether that's feelings of guilt or feeling like a unique snowflake, what we always say in this channel, or feeling like every time you have a setback, you go back into panic mode, you go back into spiral mode. How do you change habits? How can I let go of this habit and have new habits that will help foster and cultivate my self-growth? Well, in this video, I want to share with you exactly what you can do to develop the habit. And a lot of it is also understanding the mechanics of habits. How do habits form? And by the end of the video, you'll learn how to use new productive habits that not only help you in the anxiety recovery journey, but will just enrich your life in general. So without further ado, let's get it started. So if you're new to the channel, we focus on helping you overcome anxiety-based symptoms. And every time you go to the doctors, they say everything's fine, whether that's brain fog, whether that's depersonalization, derealization, the weird emotions, where you just feel like your life is turned upside down and you might be struggling with panic attacks and it might have just affected your quality of life. This channel is really dedicated to helping you understand what's happening and to help you develop these tools and strategies so that you can overcome these symptoms and go back to living. And so if you really want to know how to overcome these symptoms, what are the mechanics, what are the principles, a great place to start is clicking the link down below and downloading the desensitization blueprint. That really breaks down the principles, the frameworks, the tools to help reverse the cycle. Make sure you've gotten everything ruled out. And again, there's a bunch of resources too on this channel helping you understand why you experience certain symptoms. And we also have recovery stories, people that have recovered sharing their experience and what helped them on the journey. All those links are down below. But in this video, I'm not going to be talking about the mechanics. I'm going to be talking about another layer of recovery, which is habits. Now, what happens is when people are struggling with anxiety symptoms, they often think that the answer to their recovery is external. They might try supplements, they might try medication, they might try breathing techniques, yoga, exercise, diet, acupuncture, all these alternative things. They might be doing all these lifestyle adjustments to help them overcome their symptoms, but then they start learning that even though those things are good and they're helpful and they're good for general health, overcoming your symptoms have a lot to do with you understanding what's happening and you learning how to respond to your symptoms. But a mistake a lot of anxiety sufferers make is that they think that's enough. That if I just learn how to respond to my symptoms, that's all it takes. And while responding will help quite a bit, you might always fall back into the cycle unless you dive into the unproductive habits that you've developed. Now, a mistake a lot of anxiety sufferers make is that they try to focus on the habits first without responding. This is why I say anxiety recovery is kind of like a combination lock. You have to do the right things at the right time. learning the mechanics of anxiety, learning how to respond, then looking at the unproductive thinking habits. So it's doing certain things in the right order. Now, what happens is that in the mentorship, when we're guiding people through the recovery journey, oftentimes the mentors surface up certain habits that they see in the members and certain habits that the members also agree with that they know that aren't conducive to the recovery that surface up. And so the first step in all of this is awareness. It's recognizing that there is a problem, that there are unproductive habits that aren't serving you. A couple of habits that I had is anytime I felt anxiety, I felt justified in panicking. Meaning, if I felt a wave of anxiety, I would respond in anxiety. Now, if you were to ask me while I was struggling with anxiety, why would you do that? I would just say, well, I'm feeling anxiety, so I'm responding in anxiety. And you can easily say, great, well, when you feel angry, do you punch somebody? And I would obviously be like, no. So the idea is that you can feel anger, but you don't have to respond in anger. But when you're feeling anxious, why are you responding in anxiety? And then I realized, oh my God, I've had this unproductive habit my whole life where anytime I felt anxious, I would react with anxiety. It's just historically, I didn't really feel an intense amount of anxiety. I wasn't dealing with physical symptoms until I began struggling with this when I fell in with a panic attack. And so that was one of my unproductive thinking habits. A lot of other unproductive habits that I find is people start having this victim identity. Basically, because you've gone through something like this, you feel justified in being wounded. You feel like because you've gone through something like this, you can't live a normal life, or that you're envious of other people because they haven't gone through this, and because you're in this journey that somehow you're not gonna live a normal life. Another habit is this idea of feeling unique. Even though you might not know anybody that's gone through this, there are people that have gone through this, but letting go of that identity that somehow you are special and that this is somehow not going to work for you, but it's worked for everybody else is also a habit. And then some of the other layers of habits are, when you get panic attacks while driving, so you just avoid driving. You get panic attacks while flying, so you avoid going on trips. You have a safety person. You don't leave your house as much because you feel uncomfortable. These are all habits. Yeah, these are all habits that have developed. And so how do you break through these habits? Well, the first thing to understand is that you are not your habits. Habits are an accumulation. It's something you developed over time. Maybe it's from other people. Maybe it's in response to other things that's happened in your life. And so it's important to understand that habits aren't you. Now, the second thing to understand is that you can't just break a habit. Nobody develops a new habit overnight. And so it's important to understand that there's a difference between behaviors and habits. One of the habits that a lot of anxiety sufferers have that I've mentioned on this channel is sometimes people will watch these YouTube videos compulsively. Anytime they're feeling anxiety, they'll watch these videos. And while these videos are designed to help you on the recovery journey, sometimes these videos can give you the impression that you're focused on your recovery journey, but oftentimes these videos are used as almost coping crutches. So let's say one habit that someone has developed is constantly Google searching their symptoms. Yeah, I'm just gonna be using that as an example just to help you understand, but it's important for you to do a self-audit on, what habits have you developed over time? Now, the person who has the habit of constantly Google searching their symptoms, trying to figure out what's going on, they didn't intend to develop that habit. What ended up happening? Well, what ended up happening is that they engaged in the behavior of constantly Googling their symptoms. And what happens is that when you engage in a certain behavior over and over again, the habit forms on its own. You didn't do anything about the habit. The habit just developed on its own. So how do you break a habit? Well, it's important to understand how are habits created. It's by having the same behaviors over and over again that the habits form on their own. So it's important to understand that you can't just change a habit. An interesting way of looking at habits is that your body and brain has gotten better at doing something than you doing it consciously. It's become a strong feedback loop. So when you're breaking these unproductive habits, the first thing to understand is that it's not gonna happen overnight. When you have a habit, there's a lot of inertia behind it. Think of a race car that's going really fast. Imagine if it changes direction, there's gonna be a lot of inertia pushing it the same direction it's been going. So it's gonna take a lot of effort to go a different direction. And that's very similar with developing new habits. So how do you develop new habits? How do you develop the habit of, instead of panicking, learning how to respond? It's easy. You just practice. Practice just means having a new behavior and doing it over and over again. Do that long enough and you will develop naturally a new habit on its own. But what happens when people are struggling with anxiety? They don't understand the mechanics of habit. They don't understand the forces at play where there's a lot of inertia in breaking a habit. It's almost like this expectation of just becoming aware of a habit means you can break it right away. There's a lot of force behind it. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't break it right away, but it requires you to first be self-aware of that habit. If you notice with anxiety recovery, a lot of people will have blind spots in their recovery journey. They'll make some progress and then they'll get stuck. When you're so close to anxiety recovery, it's hard to see what areas are you missing. So it's important that when you're on the recovery journey, it's important that you have almost like a high level view. Having a neutral party or somebody who is a little bit detached that can see the forest. And the most important thing you can do is, number one, recognize that you have that habit, whatever that habit is. Again, it takes self-awareness, it takes self-reflection. And then number two, making the conscious decision that you're no longer going to be doing that habit. That often is the hardest part. Really deciding that, you know what, I'm not going to partake in that anymore. And then third is engaging in that new behavior. Just focus on the new behavior right now. Don't focus on a month. Don't focus on 2 months. Don't focus on when am I going to be developing the new habit. The unproductive habits that you have right now, you didn't develop that on purpose. All you did is that you reacted in this specific moment. The habit formed on its own. And in the same way, when you're focused on anxiety recovery, don't focus on the habit. Just focus on this moment. Just focus on this moment. Don't focus on the past. Don't focus on the future. Just this moment, and watch yourself have amazing breakthroughs on the journey. I hope this video helped. I hope it gave you some clear perspective on the role of habits, what are some of the factors and forces at play here, how to break through them, and then more importantly, like I always say, having a neutral party or somebody that understands what's going on, that's a little bit detached, that's a little bit away, so that they can look at the whole forest. They can see recovery from a high view. This way, it's a lot easier to identify some of the blind spots you have. When you're so close to this, it's natural to have blind spots. It's hard to know, are you doing things right? So it's very important that you consult with somebody that you truly trust that understands what's going on. If you're looking for resources, like I say, there's a bunch of links down below. Even if you want to apply for mentorship and work with my team to help you overcome these symptoms, you can get more information down below. I wish you the best on your recovery. I'll see you in the next video.